Some stories don't just make the news. They make an entire country stop and take a hard look at itself. Today, we're going to unpack the case of Shraddha Walkar. It's a story that goes so much deeper than just one crime, revealing some really uncomfortable truths about the world we live in. So let's try to understand what really happened here. At the very heart of this whole thing was one terrifyingly simple question. What happened to Shraddha Walkar? I mean, how does a 27-year-old woman living her life just vanish?
And we're not talking about a few days or a couple of weeks. For almost 6 months, there was nothing. Just silence. No calls to her family, no messages to her friends, no social media posts. Absolutely nothing. And it was in that complete, deafening quiet that this whole terrible mystery really started to build.
So yeah, let's start right there with that 6-month silence. Because if you want to understand how this case finally came crashing down, you first have to ask, how can a person just disappear for that long without anyone knowing? That silence was finally broken in November of 2022. And it wasn't some random discovery. It was her friends and family who, after months of this gnawing feeling that something was deeply, deeply wrong, pushed for answers. It was her father who finally went to the police and filed that missing persons report. And that one act, that was the spark that lit the fuse on this whole investigation. But to really get what led to her disappearance, we have to look at the relationship at the center of it all. We have to go behind closed doors. So their story starts in a pretty normal way for a lot of people these days. They met on a dating app back in 2019. Fast forward to 2022, and they've moved in together in a flat in Delhi. But just look at how fast things turn. By May of that same year, she was killed. And yet, the world wouldn't find out about it until November. That huge gap is just chilling. And what became painfully clear as investigators dug in was that this final, horrible act didn't just come out of nowhere. There was a history there, a disturbing pattern of frequent, intense fights, and very serious allegations of abuse. It was a storm that had been brewing for a long time, hidden away from everyone. Okay, this brings us to the crime itself, and the unbelievable calculated deception that followed. Just a heads up, the details here are disturbing, and they come directly from the police investigation. The investigation revealed a grim and brutal reality. Sometime in May, after another big argument, Aaftab strangled Shraddha in their apartment. He ended her life. But the horror didn't stop there. What he did next was just an act of cold, methodical brutality. 35, that's the number. He dismembered her body into 35 pieces. This wasn't just a murder. It was a conscious, deliberate effort to completely erase a person and the crime from existence. And the cover-up was chillingly planned out. First, he bought a brand new, large refrigerator specifically to store the remains. Then, for weeks, night after night, he would take parts of her body and dispose of them, scattering them throughout the Mehrauli forest. This wasn't a crime of passion followed by panic. This was a cold, calculated plan to get away with murder. So you have to wonder, with a cover-up this elaborate, how on earth did the truth come out? Well, the answer wasn't found in the forest. It was in the cloud. It all came down to a digital trail that he just couldn't erase. See, when the police first questioned Aaftab, his story was simple. They had a fight, she packed her bags, and she left. He claimed he had no idea where she went, but, well, data doesn't lie. Her phone's location data, bank transactions made from her account, the sudden, complete stop in all her social media activity, it all painted a picture that totally blew his story apart. It screamed foul play. So the police just systematically dismantled his lies, piece by piece. They started with the little inconsistencies in his story, then they dove deep into that digital evidence. Once they found the location data that proved he was lying, the pressure just kept mounting. Until finally, under interrogation, he broke. He confessed to everything. All that was left was to find the physical proof. And they found it. They recovered bones from the same forest he described. The DNA from those bones was a match to Shraddha's father. They found the saw and other tools he used, and on top of all that, they had his own detailed confession. When you put it all together, it created this undeniable, absolutely horrific picture of what he had done. When the full facts of this case finally came out, it was like a shockwave that hit the entire country. This wasn't just a private tragedy anymore. It became a public outcry, a demand for justice and for real change.
You couldn't get away from it. As all the gruesome details emerged, the case was everywhere. But it was way more than just a shocking news story. It sparked this wave of raw, visceral emotion across the country. Disbelief, horror, and a deep, burning sense of outrage.
And this is really why the case hit such a nerve. It forced a national conversation that was long overdue. Suddenly, everyone was asking these huge, tough questions about the silent epidemic of domestic violence, about whether women are truly safe, about mental health, and maybe most importantly, about what our role as a society, as individuals, is in preventing these tragedies from ever happening again. And if you had to boil down that massive public response into one thought, it would be this. This is not just about one victim. It is about ensuring that no other woman suffers in silence. The demand for justice for Shradha turned into a powerful call to action for everyone. And so that cry for justice for Shradha,